A bikie boss is in custody tonight with police hailing his arrest, one of the biggest.
What if I told you that behind the glass doors of an ordinary suburban gym, one of Australia's most dangerous criminal empires was being orchestrated? That the friendly businessman greeting morning customers was secretly commanding one of the country's most feared outlaw motorcycle clubs? Today, we're diving deep into the extraordinary double life of Michael Mick Murray, a story so incredible it sounds like fiction. From legitimate gym owner to alleged murderer, this is a tale of power, betrayal, and the brutal price of criminal ambition. But first, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because stories like this don't come around often. And remember, Murray maintains his innocence on all current charges, with much of what we'll discuss involving ongoing legal proceedings. Our story begins in Melbourne's quiet suburbs, where Nitro Gym appeared to be just another fitness center. Regular customers knew Murray as a dedicated businessman, successful, friendly, passionate about fitness. But this was only half the story. To understand Murray's rise, we need to go back to 2010, to Sydney's famous Bondi Beach. It's here that security cameras captured something that would change everything: a brutal brawl between rival bikers. And right there in the middle of the chaos, Mick Murray, fighting alongside future Comanchero leader Mark Buddle. Both men were arrested for fighting, and this moment marked Murray's first public display of his willingness to use violence for the club. But what exactly were the Comancheros? Founded in the 1960s, the Comancheros had evolved far beyond a simple motorcycle club. By the time Murray joined their ranks, they were a sophisticated criminal empire, with chapters across Australia and international connections spanning the globe. They operated with military-like hierarchy and strict codes, and breaking these codes could literally be fatal. The club's structure was built on loyalty, fear, and absolute obedience to leadership. Members weren't just weekend riders. They were soldiers in an organization that controlled drug trafficking, money laundering, and countless other illegal enterprises. By 2012, Murray was witnessing firsthand how quickly alliances could turn deadly. The Comancheros split from the Rock Machine motorcycle group, transforming former allies into mortal enemies overnight. These weren't simple disagreements. They were violent confrontations that left bodies in their wake. Murray watched and learned as friendships dissolved into warfare. He saw how power worked in this world, how respect was earned through fear, and how quickly someone could go from trusted ally to marked target. Throughout this period, Murray maintained his carefully constructed, legitimate front. Nitro Gym wasn't just his business, it was his perfect cover. To neighbors, it looked like any ordinary fitness center. But those familiar with outlaw culture could read the signs. Luxury cars arriving at odd hours, conversations that stopped abruptly when strangers appeared, and the unmistakable presence of men who carried themselves like they were dangerous. The gym served multiple purposes for Murray's criminal activities. It was a meeting place where members could gather without attracting attention, a front for laundering money, and a symbol of his supposed legitimacy. When police or rival gangs investigated, they'd see a successful businessman, not a criminal mastermind. But by 2014, cracks were beginning to show in Murray's carefully maintained facade. February 2014 brought our first glimpse of the real Mick Murray. During what appeared to be a simple road rage incident, he allegedly reached into another driver's car in a threatening manner. Police charged him with assault and threatening to kill, early warning signs of the violence that would come to define his leadership style. But this was nothing compared to what happened next. March 2014 brought Murray's first major crisis. Police executed a dawn raid on his home, and what they discovered painted a picture of a man living a double life. Hidden throughout the property were multiple firearms, boxes of ammunition, various drugs, and nearly $89,000 in cash. Money that couldn't be explained by gym membership fees. The charges were serious: firearms offenses and attempting to pervert the course of justice. At his bail hearing, prosecutors painted Murray as a dangerous individual who posed a significant risk to community safety. His defense team countered by emphasizing his role as a father, and legitimate businessman, arguing that he was simply a victim of his association with certain individuals. Justice Gregory Gard ultimately granted bail, but with conditions that revealed just how seriously the court took the threat Murray posed. The bail package included a $1 million surety, nightly curfews, daily check-ins with police, and most importantly, absolutely no contact with any Comanchero members. These restrictions would prove crucial to what happened next, because in 2016, everything changed. When Mark Buttle fled Australia in 2016, facing serious allegations that could have put him away for decades, he left behind something that criminal organizations fear most: a power vacuum at the very top. Despite his legal restrictions prohibiting contact with Comanchero members, Murray's influence within the Melbourne operations had been growing steadily. He had cultivated relationships, built loyalty, and positioned himself as a natural leader. When the time came to choose a new national president, his name rose to the top of the list. But taking control of an outlaw motorcycle club isn't like getting promoted at a regular job. It requires a delicate balance of diplomacy and intimidation, managing competing interests while keeping members, many of whom are used to solving problems with violence, in line. Murray had to navigate these treacherous waters while simultaneously avoiding further legal trouble. He was walking a tightrope, and one wrong step could send him to prison, or worse. The media quickly took notice of Murray's rise to power. He was described as a feared hardman and one of the fiercest bosses of all time. But behind this intimidating exterior, Murray was facing constant pressure from multiple directions: intensive law enforcement surveillance, complex internal politics, and threats from rival groups who saw opportunity in the leadership transition. August 20, 2017, provided a crucial insight into the challenges Murray faced as leader. Surveillance footage from a Canberra strip club captured him during violent clashes between Victorian and New South Wales factions of his own organization. The footage is revealing. It shows Murray positioned at the edge of the chaos, not participating directly in the violence, but clearly present during what was supposed to be an internal meeting. This wasn't the image of a leader in complete control. These incidents revealed the fractures within Murray's organization that would eventually contribute to his downfall. Despite all the rhetoric about brotherhood and loyalty, geographical rivalries and personal animosities threatened to tear the club apart from within. Making matters worse, the exiled Mark Buttle was attempting to maintain his influence through encrypted communications from overseas, creating a complex web of competing loyalties and power dynamics that Murray had to navigate. But nothing could have prepared him for what happened on February 22, 2018. February 22, 2018, shattered any illusion that Murray's position provided him or his associates with security. At Nitro Inc. Tattoo Parlor, a business connected to Murray's network, two hooded gunmen burst through the doors and opened fire on Robert Ale, Murray's right-hand man and closest friend. 9 bullets hit Ale as he lay helpless in the tattoo chair. Somehow, he survived, but the injuries were devastating. He suffered life-threatening wounds, developed severe PTSD, and was left with permanent physical damage that would affect him for the rest of his life. This wasn't a random attack or a robbery gone wrong. Police investigations revealed clear connections to internal Comanchero conflicts, and intelligence sources were reporting whispers of a contract on Murray's life. The message was unmistakable. Even the president's closest associates weren't safe. The timing made the attack even more ominous. Just days earlier, former Comanchero president Mick had been gunned down outside a Sydney gym in broad daylight, a professional hit that sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. 2 senior Comanchero figures targeted within the span of a week suggested something far more sinister than random violence. This appeared to be coordinated internal warfare, and Murray was clearly in the crosshairs. Police sources began revealing the depth of the rifts within the Comancheros, with loyalties split between Murray and his rival Jay Malcoon, These weren't minor disagreements about club policy. These were fundamental divisions that crossed state lines and affected chapters nationwide. For Murray, this situation was particularly dangerous. Leading a criminal organization requires projecting strength at all times. But the attacks on his inner circle suggested his power was weakening, and in his world, weakness was an invitation for challengers to make their move. Every decision Murray made now carried heightened stakes. Retaliate too aggressively, and he risked escalating the conflict into an all-out war that could destroy the organization. But appear weak by not responding, and he'd invite even more challenges to his authority. It was a classic catch-22 that would ultimately contribute to the violent decisions that prosecutors now allege he made. March 3, 2019, brought another killing that would eventually circle back to Murray in the most serious way possible. Mitat Racimi, a 51-year-old underworld figure, was shot 4 times while sitting in his car on a quiet suburban street. The attack was swift and professional. Racimi's vehicle crashed into a pole, and he was declared dead before emergency services could reach him. At the time, this seemed like just another underworld execution. Violent, but not necessarily connected to Murray or the Comancheros. That perception would prove to be completely wrong. Meanwhile, Murray's legal team was working to restore some normalcy to his life. In August 2019, they successfully modified his bail conditions, allowing him to retrieve his passport and travel to Thailand and Dubai for what were described as legitimate business purposes. However, when Murray arrived at Bangkok airport, Thai immigration officials took one look at his background and refused him entry, deeming him too high risk for their country. He was promptly returned to Melbourne on the next available flight, creating embarrassing headlines about the court's decision to allow his travel. This incident highlighted something crucial. Murray's criminal reputation had become international, recognized by law enforcement agencies around the world, even as he continued fighting the charges in Australia. For the next few years, Murray managed to maintain his freedom while fighting the various charges against him. But law enforcement agencies were building a case that would ultimately bring his criminal empire crashing down. April 28, 2022, at 5 a.m., brought the moment Murray had likely been dreading. Police stormed his home, arresting the 44-year-old president for the first-degree murder of Mitat Racimi. Simultaneously, they raided Nitro Gym, seizing computers, documents, and any evidence that might support their case. The investigation that led to Murray's arrest was extensive and sophisticated. Police had been analyzing encrypted communications, financial records, and surveillance footage for years, building a comprehensive picture of his alleged criminal activities. In November 2022, Murray faced preliminary hearings where some charges, including tax evasion, were dismissed. But the murder accusation remained, and prosecutors made it clear they believed they had a strong case. But that wasn't the end of the story. May 22, 2025 brought even more serious developments when Murray was charged with a second murder, the 2017 killing of Mohammed Youssel in what prosecutors described as a mistaken identity hit. Murray and his co-accused, George Camvisis, pleaded not guilty to these charges. But the 2 murder accusations, spanning from 2017 to 2019, suggested a pattern of violence throughout Murray's entire tenure as Comanchero president. Prosecutors allege that these weren't crimes of passion or self-defense, but calculated decisions to eliminate perceived threats to Murray's power and authority. If proven true, they would represent the ultimate evolution of Murray's transformation from legitimate businessman to cold-blooded killer. With Murray imprisoned and facing life sentences, the Comancheros were forced into yet another leadership transition. Alan Meehan, previously the Sydney chapter president, stepped into the national role and began operating for Melbourne. But Meehan faced his own significant challenges: legal orders restricting his activities, death threats from rivals, and ongoing power struggles within the organization that Murray's imprisonment had left unresolved. The organization structure proved resilient. Criminal enterprises like the Comancheros are designed to survive the loss of individual leaders. but cracks were definitely showing. In 2023, Meehan resigned under legal pressure and was briefly replaced by Bemir Sarasevich, demonstrating the ongoing instability at the top levels of the organization. Murray's arrest was part of broader international investigations spanning Australia and New Zealand. Specialized task forces had uncovered sophisticated money laundering operations, extensive drug trafficking networks, and encrypted communication systems that connected Melbourne operations to international crime syndicates. These investigations revealed that Murray's influence had extended far beyond Australian borders, with documented connections to criminal organizations in Asia and Europe. Asset seizure proceedings targeted numerous properties and businesses linked to the organization's financial network, dismantling the empire Murray had spent years building. As of today, Murray sits in custody facing 2 separate murder charges that could result in life imprisonment. The upcoming Supreme Court proceedings will determine his fate and potentially expose the inner workings of the Comancheros to unprecedented public scrutiny. Every encrypted message, every business transaction, every piece of surveillance footage could become evidence in these trials. Former allies are facing pressure to cooperate with authorities, while remaining members must decide how far they're willing to go to protect the organization's secrets. The trials promise to provide rare windows into this secretive world, revealing how modern organized crime operates and the brutal reality behind the Brotherhood rhetoric. Murray's story perfectly illustrates the broody mathematics of organized crime. Power gained through violence must be maintained through violence, and in this world, every ally is a potential enemy waiting for the right moment to strike. His journey from suburban gym owner to alleged murderer represents one of the most dramatic rises and falls in recent Australian criminal history. What started as a seemingly legitimate business became the front for a criminal empire that allegedly left multiple bodies in its wake. The true crime here isn't just the specific charges Murray faces, it's the systematic violence that defines outlaw motorcycle club culture. Behind all the rhetoric about brotherhood and loyalty lies a world where disputes are settled with bullets and power changes hands through intimidation and murder. As his trials proceed, they'll provide unprecedented insight into this secretive world. But regardless of the legal outcomes, Murray's story serves as a stark reminder that in criminal organizations, the only certainty is uncertainty, and power always comes with a price that few are truly prepared to pay. From the quiet facade of Nitro Gym to prison walls, Mick Murray's story is ultimately about choices and consequences. Every decision to embrace violence, every step deeper into the criminal hierarchy, brought him closer to this moment, facing 2 murder charges and watching the collapse of everything he had built. The Comancheros will survive without Murray, just as they've survived previous leadership changes throughout their violent history. But Murray's legacy will be defined not by the power he wielded at his peak, but by the violence he allegedly unleashed and the lives forever changed by his ruthless pursuit of criminal authority. If this deep dive into Australia's criminal underworld fascinated you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more in-depth true crime investigations. Remember, all individuals mentioned are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. What do you think about Murray's transformation from businessman to alleged killer? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe out there.